Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this premiere of Season 3 of Epilepsy Gangster. It's very special tonight because we have with us a famous musician who 30 years ago wanted to have some pioneering surgery done so that she could remain playing in orchestras. It was so revolutionary that her own neurosurgeon was afraid to do the operation as a result of the possible consequences. However, this operation was so good that she played better than she ever had before, and 60 Minutes actually had her as a guest on their show nearly 30 years ago. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to Epilepsy Gangster.
Epilepsy is an invisible disability. It can strike at the most unexpected moments, like the most devious gangster. Epilepsy is a criminal. The epilepsy gangster steals money from people. It doesn't matter if he steals it from college funds, whether it's from retirement plans, and some of his victims have to choose between spending money for food or spending it on medicine. The epilepsy gangster robs people of relationships and job opportunities. But most diabolical of all, the epilepsy gangster kills. Like all criminals, the epilepsy gangster must be stopped. Watch Tim Ulmer and his gang you're meeting, who are committed to ending the crime spree of the epilepsy gangster.
Ladies and gentlemen, part of what keeps me motivated to do this show for you is when I meet passionate people. And there's one person I've become acquainted with in recent months who is one of the most passionate individuals I've known, and she does it through her violin. Martha, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Tim. I'm really glad to be here.
You insisted on surgery when other people advised against it. Back in 1991, that's what people today would call the Stone Age of neurosurgery.
I think of the 50s as the Stone Age. I mean, the real Stone Age. But what made mine so early was I was the first professional musician.
You did it so remarkably that you caught the attention of 60 Minutes in the Today Show. And ladies and gentlemen, let's show you the opening to Martha's appearance on 60 Minutes.
What makes Martha Curtis's story so remarkable is more than what comes from her violin. Listen to her play for a moment, and then we'll tell you what it is she has overcome that makes her story so remarkable. This is also Martha Curtis, just 6 years ago on videotape. She's having an epileptic seizure. How did this Martha Curtis become this Martha Curtis, a solo violinist?
That was quite an experience you had, Martha.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's why I went, that grand mal seizure you see right after me playing is what drove me to the surgeries.
How did the epilepsy gangster come into your life?
I was a 3-year-old, and my mother heard banging in the crib and realized that I was really not okay, picked me up, took me to the hospital, and I was in status epilepticus, which is one grand mal seizure after another. And it's how people die because you don't get enough oxygenation to the brain. So she got me there, and obviously they kept me alive. And yeah.
How did your family react to this?
Well, I was really fortunate because, of course, they were horrified. I went home on tons of phenobarbital, and my mother was just, practically shaking, she said. But it was my doctor, my pediatrician, who looked at her and said, "What your daughter has is a medical problem. You could make this a very serious problem. This one could do anything. Get out of her way." To not be upset with seizures. Just let her be her, because she's got a lot to her. And she just kept putting, my mom was a pianist. And within a year and a half had me playing the piano and dancing. Had played an audition and won a major scholarship to the Interlochen Arts Academy. See, when I came back as an 11-year-old, I had a grand mal seizure at home. So the whole thing started back up again. And I then got a letter. After you win that big scholarship, you have to send the medical records. And I got a letter that said, we're not equipped to handle you here. My mother got a hold of that doctor who told her to get out of my way. My mom got a hold of that doctor, and he did whatever he did. Talked to them, wrote a letter, did whatever it was he did. And I'm guessing said she's only having auras.
Yeah.
And then turned to me and said, you can go anywhere from 180 to 300 milligrams of phenobarb. You're the only one who's going to know when they start to cluster. So just hit it with 300. So that's when, by all accounts, I played every rehearsal and every concert, and I don't remember a whole lot of the people, because I went there and focused very hard on being very capable. That was my job, was to focus everything on being able to impress them with my abilities. So that's where I put all my effort.
As you got older and you became aware of things yourself, how did seizures make you feel?
Well, from the start, a seizure for me was this brewing, impending doom. And if it grew, it was that eeriness that starts shutting down cognition, right? And it would travel, as it takes over more brain, it got the world more and more unsafe, and something was coming at me from the horizon with intent to kill.
Intent to kill?
Yeah. And if it got all the way, if both sides went, something came over my left shoulder to kill me, and I would go, Grandma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it became this overwhelming emotion that had nothing to do with anyone else's reality.
Did you tell people about this?
I told my mom that they were icky feelings, but I didn't tell her much else, because that was, by the time I was about 7, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest happened, and I did not want to be locked up in a psych ward.
Oh, wow.
Nobody else talked about something coming over their left shoulder to kill them.
Jack Nicholson didn't realize he had such an effect on his audience.
Didn't. No, but it was really strong, because I knew I couldn't talk to other people with those details. I would tell my mother when the eeriness would hit, I'd tell her I was having an icky feeling. And then I just learned to go into the mirror. I just learned to use my own eyes. I'd go into the mirror and talk and cry and realize that I was still there. If something's coming to kill, it's good to know you can see yourself and you can talk to her.
Really? How long did you do this?
What I was still doing as an adult.
Yeah?
Because nobody ever gets real safe with it. It's something you kind of, you keep to yourself a lot, but also the world tells you how to think and how to feel. And my feelings had nothing to do with anybody else, right? I was having these bizarre feelings and I wasn't going to tell it. So I would go in and find out what I was thinking and what I was feeling.
Oh, that's interesting. When I was a child, I called it a funny feeling. It was tingling in my arms, and I had hallucinations. And growing up during the Vietnam War, I'd actually see a GI from Vietnam standing there ready to bayonet me. So I empathize with you completely about that. Mm-hmm. There's more to it than simply the seizures themselves.
I actually, that violin took me to Interlochen. It's an international fine arts camp in the summertime. And then I really wanted to go. Here I was, in and out of this impaired state. But I had this wild violin teacher who really wanted me there. And that's where I fell in love. That in an orchestra, I could develop my passionate love for life. That matters.
So you really felt you belonged there?
Yeah, I knew I belonged there because while I was fine, I was one of them. And the other thing about an orchestra that I realized very quickly was that it was a community in which people expressed pride instead of fear. Now, you know, like the rest of us know, that when you sort of come back from how far you've gone, whatever kind of seizure, people look bad. People look terrified. But if an 11-year-old bounces off stage after a concert, people look great. That's the look I wanted on people's faces, was this total appreciation of me.
By bouncing back like that, did you get it?
Well, I didn't always seize. So it was pretty cool. You know, I realized that the violin would switch their focus to me as a violinist. You mean deal with this epilepsy nonsense? You know, I hated that word. It gave people a reason to be afraid. Playing the violin does not give people a reason to be afraid.
You wanted to be a violinist, not an epileptic.
You got it.
When you bring up the unpredictability, why was it you would go out on stage not certain that you wouldn't seize?
It was pure desire. I wanted to play Brahms. I wanted that feeling. There is a different kind of, it's an overwhelming emotion again, but it's a wonderful one, you know, to be in the middle of a Brahms symphony. And it was that desire that had me do whatever it took. It took a little bit to realize this, that epilepsy's in the world, so the world should have to cope. And I knew they weren't, full-time orchestra wasn't going to pay me a full-time salary to like have seizures here and there in their rehearsals and performances. So I auditioned for part-time orchestras, regional orchestras. They're fully professional. They don't pay as much because you don't play as often. So I played 4 orchestras in 3 different states. And I decided at that price, they'd have to cope. You know, I played my way into the orchestras. The conductors loved me because when I was fully aware, I was a good violinist.
Here she is with the West Virginia Symphony, the same group of musicians who saw her seize on this same stage in 1990. Conductor Tom Conlon.
She would freeze. She would kind of freeze and shake, and a glassy look would come over her. I saw this out of the corner of my eye, and I thought, it can't be, it simply can't be, but then I knew it was, but we were in the middle of a performance, so we had to go on.
Tell us, how did you handle a seizure during a concert?
Well, eventually, I taught the person next to me what to do. And I never said seizure. I never said epilepsy. I looked at him and said, if my eyes get kind of glassy and I start playing garbage, you know, I'm not playing what's really on the page, or if I grab your arm and tell you I'm about to die, I'm about to be killed, something like that. Just get my violin and my bow out of my hands, put them on the floor in front of me, and make sure you go back to playing, and I'll be back. So I would sit there and have a complex spiritual seizure, and one of them was with Malcolm Frager, great pianist, in the middle of a Beethoven piano concerto.
Did you ever have people, though, who didn't react properly or they didn't realize what was going on?
Well, yeah, sure. You know, I had someone try to slap me out of it once. That wasn't good. Yeah, I call it my John Wayne seizure. But it was during a rehearsal, and I got off stage, and I didn't know someone slapped me. I didn't know, but when I went across the street and put my violin away in my locker, I was shaking really hard, like I was really, really scared. But I couldn't feel scared. I couldn't feel the fear. I could just watch my body be scared. So I asked my husband, what happened? And he told me this violinist got really nervous and tried to slap me out of it. So yeah, sometimes people do really odd things.
Martha, what was the straw that broke the camel's back and made you decide to go for surgery?
Well, I had gotten the world pretty used to me going in and out of complex partial seizures. But one night, I ended up on the floor. I didn't know I was on the floor yet until I heard that voice say, pulse, heart rate good, breathing returning to normal. That's not a good sign. And then I realized I was on the floor and I must have had a grand mal seizure. It was all of a sudden I had 3 grand mal seizures in a month. Grand mal, nobody gets past that. You don't get to walk out on stage if you're going to have a grand mal seizure. So that's when I decided somebody better do something or other.
Tell us about the process.
See, I had a neurologist who wanted me to have epilepsy surgery for a while. And I had told him, he said, we can do it with the only real deficit becomes memory. I put up my violin and my hands like I'm playing. And I said, do you realize everything I do is memory? And he backed down. Then I had the grand mal seizures and I said, all right, you win. He referred me to a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. And so I met Hans Luters. He was horrified.
He was horrified.
Once we collected information, you go into the epilepsy monitoring unit and have electrodes put all over your head, but also through your jaws. So through the sphenoid joint, so they can read the other side of the temporal lobe. All my EEGs were normal until we got on the other side of the temporal lobe. And then he said interictal spiking almost 24 hours a day. Now I felt like I was in the right place. The floor, the nurses and techs were very excited because it was all coming from right temporal lobe. And they do right temporal lobes a lot. But then Luters came to my room and he didn't even walk all the way in the door. He stood in the doorway and said, it is the right. He was scared. They had never done, when he told me in his office, he said, I'm on uncharted waters. I said, let's chart the waters.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tim Ulmer. Between the last 2 seasons of Epilepsy Gangster, I had a wonderful milestone occur that was life-changing. I went 2 years without a seizure. All my life, since the age of 2, I've averaged a seizure every 3 weeks and probably been on over 30 medications. I have an epileptologist who keeps up on what's happening. And 2020, he put me on a new medication and the frequency of seizures lengthened. He told me that if I could go 2 years seizure-free, he'd even improve me driving again. Well, it turned out that this spring, I drove myself to church for the first time in 33 years. It was a dream come true. Make sure your epileptologist keeps you informed on what's new in treatments and medications.
At SK Life Science, time is turning the idea of a healthy world into treatments of the future, one patient at a time, knowing that every second counts, as every moment is priceless, bringing new options to patients with epilepsy. And the vision of a world where 0 seizures is not just a hope for humanity, but a possibility to bring more to life.
But then Luters came to my room and he didn't even walk all the way in the door. He stood in the doorway and said, it is the right. When he told me in his office, he said, I'm on uncharted waters. I said, let's chart the waters. He immediately looked at my husband and said, bring me 6 musical excerpts. She will know automatically. So the next test was the WADA test. They wanted to know right-left dominance. They do that on everybody. But it's not some just cool psych test from the 80s. They actually anesthetize the right brain and talk to just the left brain.
The whole right brain. Wow.
The whole right brain, yeah. And then they anesthetize the left brain and talk to the right brain. See what it knows. Because they want to know what you're using and what you're not using. So I wasn't using my right brain. I could do about everything with my left brain. So they made me do it again the next day. That's not fair. They catheterized, it goes, femoral artery to carotid artery. And they wanted to make sure they had the right brain down far enough that it wasn't helping the left, because my left brain was so good. It's called neuroplasticity, right? Where you're doing this all your life, working your digits and with emotion and physicalness and memorizing and repeating and repeating and repeating. And my left brain was doing everything. It's not surprising that I wasn't counting on the damaged piece.
Yeah.
But it's relieving.
All your years of your brain had been rewiring itself automatically.
Yep, because I was doing something. But
wow.
But that is what happens. There was a 9-year-old whose left side was bad. That's where the speech centers are. And so the mother was terrified because it wasn't her 80-year-old father, it was her 9-year-old daughter. I saw her when the child had come out of surgery and the surgeon said to the mother, she's already spoken to me. They were able to take out left temporal lobe and have the child still speaking because it had moved.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You gave a performance in Cleveland for your doctors.
Cleveland's Severance Hall echoes with the memory of a lot of great music. But this evening will be like no other. Martha Curtis, an epileptic, is about to perform for the doctors who saved her memory. A decade ago, she was a professional violinist until she started having seizures on stage.
Is that more of a tribute to them or an affirmation of your own comeback?
That was more of them putting me on stage to show what I was a big conference. And they were so happy that I got through with no deficits. They were terrified the whole time. There was a first surgery, there was a second surgery, there was a third surgery. They kept going in and taking more and came out victorious after some medicine changes also. I mean, it wasn't just slick. There was nothing slick about this process. But I ended up winning, and they ended up winning. They were scared to death. And in the last one, it was my left hand that scared them. They were going very deep. The amygdala is right next to the bundle of blood vessels. It can be hit too easily, and that's one thing he was very afraid of, was downing my whole left side. I just looked at him, at least what I was thinking was, you're really good. It's going to be okay. Go slow, sweat hard. It's going to be okay.
Go slow, sweat hard. Good.
Yeah.
What has life been like since?
Well, it's uninterrupted consciousness. People have no idea what they have. When they have uninterrupted consciousness, I went back and studied with my teacher, had a whole new training period in my life, and I came out playing this major recital all over the country. I either spoke and put playing in it, or I played a full recital and stopped it and spoke. So I was using words and music to put my story out there, but I was really playing. And my teacher realized at that point that I really couldn't have done that before with that much interruption in my brain. But having uninterrupted consciousness is phenomenal. We adopted a baby, and then we adopted 2 years later another baby, and they're 22 and 24 now. And if you ever want to take the attention off yourself, that's That's the way to go. Yeah. So I got that part, is like, I didn't do that while I was still seizing because I wasn't around.
How did you get around?
I took a lot of city buses, unable to drive, right? But one other thing that's important for people to know is that if you go after something you love, you're going to be with people who also love that. They can drive.
Yeah, carpool. Well, what was it like getting around on the bus? So you told me you had some adventures about it.
Oh yeah, well, so I never knew when a seizure was going to hit. And I mean, that's the problem. And so, sometimes I would, come back from a complex partial seizure, which is a kind that people can see. It's not all internal. It has gone further. And nobody was seated near me anymore. I mean, they all got scared and headed for a different part of the bus. So I then went to the front of the bus and said, have I gotten to this street, whatever my destination was? And asked the bus driver. And if he said, no, it's coming up, then I got off the bus where I was supposed to. But if he said, yeah, we passed that, I said, cool, I'm going to stay near you and I'm going to go around again. And when we get there, help me know to get off. So I would just stay near the driver and let him know, just tell me when I'm there.
Did you ever tell him why you were asking the question and what your problem was?
No. The only time anybody really found out was when I had a grand mal seizure.
Yeah.
And then they stopped the bus. I didn't know what happened, but they bring the ambulance to the bus and all that. And nobody dies. I just want to make that point to everybody. If you have a grand mal seizure on a bus, someone's going to take care of it. I always counted on people if I went grand mal, they are scared enough to call an ambulance. So you're going to live. And so are they.
Something that is very, very intimidating to people with epilepsy, myself included, is the loneliness and the lack of companionship. Right. Please tell us about how you met your husband.
Well, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that I met him in a string quartet. We were new graduate students and found 4 people who wanted to play quartets together. And we sat down and sight read Beethoven's C minor quartet. And I noticed this cellist because he was playing great bass lines right straight into my part. It's like, okay. But I really noticed him when we decided to be a quartet. And during rehearsals, I would click out. I was in the middle of a big drug change when I hit that city. And my second violinist knew me in another city, so she knew what was happening. But I'd come back, and he was the first person in my life who smiled at me. That's huge.
Yes,
Nobody, my mother never smiled at me. Nobody, everyone was scared. Everyone is always scared. And for some reason, he could reflect that the world was okay and that I was okay, even when I felt that bad.
That's absolutely wonderful. I didn't meet my wife until I was 40, and I don't think she's ever smiled. As you described Walter smiling.
Yeah, he just smiled and told me I had a seizure. And I would argue and say, no, I didn't really have a seizure because you only remember the aura, right? So no, I didn't have a seizure. What makes you think I had a seizure? By that time, he'd seen, the glacé eyes and all the automatisms and me saying bizarre things, he'd seen the whole thing. And I thought, he will not be able to do this many times, but he did it every time. And I was just dumbstruck that somebody smiled and smiled again and smiled the next time. That's huge. It wasn't a good enough quartet to put up with quartets. So he and I became a duo. And that really serious, one-on-one with your own idea of how things should go. And we somehow made it through that and got married. It's like, whoa, if we can do that, we can get through anything. If you can play the Kodai duo, Ravel Sonata. I'm telling you.
What's your marriage been like since the surgeries?
Well, it was interesting because when I got all the way through 3 surgeries, my husband looked at me and said, "It just feels like you don't need me anymore." And I said, "I don't. I really don't. But we could have fun now. We could have a blast." I always figured he kind of married me because I was a sickie, and he did have to, he had to drive places and he had to ask me a lot, but, go get my drugs and help make sure I took them and stuff. But now I was on a train going to Manhattan to work with my pianist so I could go play recitals all over the country. And he became a computer scientist. So that's really weird. I didn't have a cellist anymore. I had a computer scientist. And he had a wife gone a whole lot, able to just be on stage without anybody but her pianist. So yeah, it's been, and I was warned to be, to keep in mind that people with epilepsy surgery get a lot of divorces.
Really?
Yeah. That once the seizures are gone, the balance is so different. There's a very high divorce rate. So you got to pay attention to each other. We had to really pay attention, that he just wanted to know where he had a place in my life now.
You still talk to the girl in the mirror anymore?
Oh yeah, but she smiles a lot. She's doing really well.
You've made a comment to me previously that life isn't linear. Would you please explain what you mean by life is not linear?
Well, we get told that if you go to this school, this will happen. If you get this degree, that will happen. If you marry this person, that will happen. I mean, there's all this nonsense about what's going to happen, this linear thing. And we all know by a certain time that it's just not true. It's a nice idea, but it's a very curvy road for everybody. And I just got knocked down a lot of times on it. So I just figured out, I went to the eyes and figured out what to do. What am I going to do with this? And just came out doing a whole lot of didn't read the books in college. I took the notes and, got on the buses and had seizures and asked the guy where I was. Yeah. It's really important. Just go out there. Just go out there. The world can deal. And if that person doesn't, find a different person.
Is there a final word of advice you have for people with epilepsy?
Look into the mirror and find the most beautiful eyes in the universe, the eyes that know you, and talk to that person. Figure it out, coach, cry, and tell her that you love her, and that you're going to be there. And then pick people who are supportive. They can do it. There aren't a whole lot of them, but you need people around. You need a person around who can remember that you're good, even when you feel bad. And then trust your own thinking. I can't say that enough. Trust your own thinking. You were born with everything you need but information. I mean, you're born that way, to be able to figure out what to do. It's my mantra is always, from a little kid was, oh yes, I can. Oh yes, I can. And then I just kind of marched off and did it.
Martha, you have given us so much to think of. Thank you very much for your appearance here, and may God bless you.
Well, thank you. People can do this.
The Defeating Epilepsy Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping those battling epilepsy. We provide advocacy and educational services to those battling epilepsy at a global level. For more information about our projects and services, please visit our website at www.defeatingepilepsy.org or email us at info@defeatingepilepsy.org. Please like us on social media and follow us so you can see how we are making a difference. Thank you for your support, and together we will defeat epilepsy.
Hi, I am Natalie Beavers, and I am one of the many survivors living with epilepsy. My life has been filled with many ups and downs. It's just a part of life. I am proud of the person that I am becoming, and as I stand in the face of this relentless disorder called epilepsy, I want you all to know that I am me.
Apparent fainting spells overshadowed this person's true talent, but a single breathtaking performance captured the world's attention and hearts. Despite this lifetime challenge, this woman's unwavering passion for singing propelled her into the global spotlight and shattered misconceptions about epilepsy. Throughout her childhood in humble Blackburn, Scotland, peers and adults alike misunderstood her problem and teased her. She was misdiagnosed for being intellectually disabled, which caused her to be terribly underestimated. Nevertheless, she found solace in her love for music. She honed in on her talent alone in the quiet moments of her daily life. Her resilience and dedication paid off when she stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent in 2009 and delivered a performance that left both judges and audience members spellbound. Her story is one of perseverance in the face of adversity. It fueled a creative spark within her that drove her towards artistic expression and public recognition. Her journey underscores a profound message that neurological conditions, while challenging, do not define nor limit a person's potential. Her popularity's become worldwide. Her openness about her epilepsy has helped to demystify it and the challenges and stigmas associated with it, which provides hope and inspiration to countless individuals facing similar battles. This remarkable individual is none other than Susan Boyle. To anyone who has a dream, I say follow that dream. You are never too old, and it is never too late.
Hey, Epilepsy Gangster, do you actually believe that crowd is cheering for you? It's cheering for me, my gang, researchers, and all the people who are going to put you out of business and beat you. And for the rest, may God bless you, may you be seizure-free.